Hi, I'm Lisa Leiter. In this special edition of Chicago Business Today, the year in review in real estate. Whether it's the hotel market's record deal for the Elysian or the apartment market's $1 billion worth of deals, no doubt 2011 was a headline-grabbing year in real estate. The downtown office market improved, with vacancy rates dropping, and there are fewer empty retail spaces as well. But it wasn't all good news, of course. Foreclosures continue to weigh on the housing market and home values, along with joblessness. Senior real estate reporter Alby Gallun joined me to talk more about 2011 and take a look at what's ahead for 2012. So Alby, let's start with commercial real estate. Downtown vacancy rates have been improving throughout the year. Sort of these predictions of another crash in the commercial real estate market never really came to pass. What's the outlook for 2012? Are we likely to continue to see improvement in the downtown office market?
It really is dependent on what happens with the job market and kind of the macro economy. Ultimately, demand for office space is driven by jobs and corporate expansions. And, we've seen a slight turnaround this year, and I would expect that to continue, but I certainly wouldn't expect a huge improvement in the market, at least over the next 6 months or so.
And how about lending? Has the financing situation gotten a little bit better? Is it a little bit easier for these developers to get financing for something that looks like a solid deal?
Well, it's absolutely a lot better than it was 2 years ago. And we've seen major improvements in real estate finance since then. Lenders are still cautious, though. I mean, they really, their standards are much tougher. You have to put in more equity. And, I think the real question for commercial real estate in 2012, just beyond development, is what happens to a lot of loans that were made during the boom in 2007. What happens when they come due? And a lot of them come due in 2012. They're 5-year loans. And, it's much tougher to get, property prices have come down. It's hard to get the same amount of leverage. And so there's going to be a funding gap. And the question is, how are landlords going to be able to fill that gap? And there's probably going to be more distress in 2012 as a result of that.
Hotel sales really hot this year. Perhaps the biggest deal was Sam Zell's buyout of the Elysian Hotel. It was a record deal, more than $500,000 per room. What's the outlook for 2012 for hotel sales? We saw them trail off a little bit at the end of the year, but what are people saying is going to happen next year?
I think it'll be a good year for hotel sales. The outlook for occupancies and room rates is still pretty good. We're going to see growth probably in the 7 or 8% range. And so that'll give investors comfort. And as long as we don't see some major disruption in the broader economy or in the financial markets, I think the hotel sales market will continue to hum along.
The apartment market, another red hot area. We saw $1 billion worth of deals so far this year. It's shaping up to be a really good year. We're still seeing this demand for apartments for a lot of reasons. How dependent is that market on what happens in the single-family home market?
Well, it's just the other side of the coin, and until you see a turnaround in the for sale market, I think the apartment market is going to continue to be strong. And you're seeing it in there's a lot of evidence of that. You're seeing this year we had a lot of downtown apartment towers get off the ground. I don't know if we'll see quite as many in 2012, but I think we're going to see pretty solid rent growth. Maybe not as strong as we've had over the last year, but I don't see any real change in the horizon. I mean, and especially if you see the job market and the broader economy improve, that should be good for apartments. But on the other hand, it could also be good for the for sale market, because once people are more confident about the economy, they might be more confident about buying a home.
Well, let's talk about the local single-family home market. We're still seeing some struggles there. Prices, haven't really improved that much, if at all, in some cases falling. Sales still struggling. Foreclosure still dogging the market. What is the outlook? Is 2012 finally going to be the year where we see some real solid recovery?
We've been asking that question for, I think, like 3 or 4 years now. And, I think there's some hope, but on the other hand, you mentioned foreclosures. I mean, we're going to see more foreclosures, and that's just going to weigh on the market.
All right, Alby. Well, it's likely to be another exciting year in real estate. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And that's a special edition of Chicago Business Today. Be sure to stick with chicagobusiness.com for all of your local business headlines and check out Chicago Real Estate Daily to keep up with all of the real estate news. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.